Welcome to Perusing's Appraisers on Purpose podcast. Our podcast showcases inspiring appraisers and professionals from the industry who are leaders in their field. How did they get to where they are? What have they learned along the way? What can we learn from them? Your host is real estate investor, entrepreneur, and appraiser, Michael Hobbs.
All right, so we are back. Such a fascinating and historical perspective of the market leading up to what ultimately would become the great financial crisis. And as you were attending to that riveting perspective that Jim was sharing with us before, make sure to go ahead and hit that like button and share this out. This is better than watching The Big Short. So, Jim, there was a hostile takeover of Fannie Mae in 2008, and you show up one day and suddenly, like, everybody up above in the big suites is all new.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So that Monday morning about 10 o'clock, we had the Dallas office, and we had a big meeting hall there in Dallas office. And they discussed everything that went over the weekend. And we're just kind of like, at least we all have jobs.
Yes.
And they're talking about these different ideas and what's going on. And looking back at it now, I realized we didn't have a housing crisis, right? It wasn't.
Yeah.
These houses just all didn't fall to the ground one day.
No, not even close.
What I, realized is very simply, we wrote a whole bunch of dirty paper that we had to launder. And how do you launder bad notes, right? You either restructure the note, you foreclose on the property, get a new occupant in there that would pay.
Yes.
Or, go through a short sale situation. Those are your three options. And then what you needed to do is take this bad book of business that nobody wanted and turn it into a new book of business. And one of the ways that you did that is people that were paying their mortgages, you dropped the interest rate down to a point where it makes sense for them to refinance into clean book of business.
Yes.
So we went through all that, and, changes didn't happen overnight.
Yes.
But we went from a department of, when I started, 21 people. I was part of the OG, the original group. Like I said, when I was at Aurora, I was 20 years younger than anybody. When I went to Fannie Mae, it was kind of joked as it was the appraiser's boneyard. It's where you went to retire. That was your final job before you. So it was kind of the same situation. I was surrounded by all these people that were older than me, but I was dealing with the short sale valuations and built out one platform, one dashboard that we used, and was working on others. And then we were growing, and management was asking me if I would, want to go into management position. Well, I had a 1.5-year-old daughter and a wife who had just started working that had an obvious better career trajectory than I could ever have.
I get it.
When she got her job, she was manager marketing for the company, and she has worked herself up to COO of a company now.
Good for her. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And great for you in supporting her in that.
She's my better half by 5 times.
As they say, you married up and you married well.
Oh, totally married up. We couldn't both have a high, and Fannie Mae, when you were an analyst position, when it was pretty laid back. I mean, you just went in and did your job and you left. When you went into your first manager position, it was high strung position.
Oh,
it was. Yeah, it was.
Didn't know that.
I could see it on the faces of people that I started with, that when they started getting into management positions, they were in a lot more stress. And I didn't want any of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I stayed pretty much in that position through 9 years.
Oh, wow.
In that department. And we started with doing REO reconciliations. Then we did short sale reconciliations. And then we started doing repurchase reviews. There was a group in our department that started doing that.
Yep.
Then they branched out, and that department got over. Then we had a whole field appraiser department.
Oh, really?
that you had, who was it? You had one of the managers, one of the directors.
Okay.
So not too long ago. But so in about 2009, we were growing so fast that we literally had a classroom set up.
Yes.
Where we would bring these appraisers in like 12 at a time.
Yep.
And if they couldn't make it within the first 2 weeks,
Had to cut them.
Friday afternoon, the famous phone call and told not to come in Monday, But if there's a manager that liked somebody that needed, they thought they needed a little bit more training, a little bit personal training, I, for some reason, was the person that people sat with. In many of the cases, I helped build the systems and knew all the shortcuts and all the how to do things a lot easier than what was being taught, basically. And so if they thought they had a person that was really good at the analysis but needed help other places, they would sit with me for 2 or 3 days. I never thought much of it. And, several people sat with me through the years. It seemed like I had every couple months there was somebody I sat with, for 3 or 4 days sometimes. And we grew. I mean, it got crazy at one point. That department was providing 500,000 value products a month, 500,000. And that was value reconciliations, ordering appraisals, ordering BPOs, ordering, the whole gamut of everything that happened in them. That's how big it got. It went from 21 people to well over 200 people. We had a field crew go out and in different markets and check appraisers' work and stuff like that. So it was an exciting time. And then I was there for 9 years. So there's 3 3-year intervals. There's the first 3 years, which was hanging on by our skin of our teeth. the middle 3 years.
That's a good visual there, Jim.
Yeah.
Hanging on by the skin of the teeth.
Yeah. I mean, just we were holding things together with duct tape and baling wire. I mean, it seemed like, we were working 12.
I had a lot of farmers that are quite resourceful in pulling that off with baling duct tape.
Yeah. I was working 10, 12-hour days at sometimes when I was doing the short sale stuff. And then once we built up, a manager took that desk over. So my workload dramatically decreased. Amazing. It was nice. But during that time, I have a saying that, you earn so much respect for other people when you spill mud in the same blood. I mean, you spill blood in the same mud. Sorry, I got it backwards. There's my dyslexia. So, yeah, I mean, there a lot of us that were in that group. I mean, we have so much respect for each other.
It was kind of like your own version of going through boot camp together. I mean, like you said, it was in three 3-year blocks, and the first one was just hanging on by the skin of your teeth.
Yeah. And I mean, the properties that we were dealing with, too, were just absolutely nightmares. I mean, there's a whole story in that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, things that, I still have a good friend of mine that worked there with me for 8 years. We talk about the stuff that we do now is like, we do it with one hand but tied behind our backs with one eye closed. I mean, it's just
not the same. I mean,
it's like.
So what was the second 3-year period? So the first one was hanging on by the skin of your teeth. How was that second 3-year period?
Yeah, kind of the second year was building up the department, getting it all running smooth. We had an incredible VP that knew he wasn't an appraiser.
Yep.
He didn't know anything about appraisal or valuations really, except for what he was dealing with, but he knew how to get people in the right seats and manage a department.
Yep.
So we built up, and then, the crisis kind of started slowing down.
So how was the third 3-year period?
So the third 3-year period was, I hate to say this, because I'm one of these people that I like to work at a level that is like just beyond what I'm capable of. And I'm happy. those
I
last
appreciate
three,
it. Yeah.
those last 3 years, it was like I was working 50% of my capacity. But, you know, it was such a good place to work. I mean, you just went in, you did your job. We had incredible benefits, incredible 401k. I was in a group that had even once I got hired in, like
Yeah.
I was in this middle group that got a special deal. So my 401k just grew and grew and grew
Good for you.
because they were getting rid of the pension. They used to have a pension.
Oh, I see.
There's a group there that got this special deal that got extra percentage added into your 401k that if you just happen to start, like, I think it was like 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, whatever that threshold is. If you're in before the threshold, you're a part of it. And if you're in after it, you're not.
Yeah. And then 4 weeks, vacation a year, holidays and stuff. It got to be really laid back.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we go back to a story about how I went to go to a school in Dallas. The school was on this hill in Dallas. It's the highest point in Dallas. And when I was a senior there, I would go in before school started and look out the windows and I'd look at these office buildings.
Yep.
Way off the distance. And I said, you know, I'm going to be working in one of those office buildings one day. And that was my kind of thing that high school counselor said I was not college material, which means in my mind, I was going to be digging ditches the rest of my life, right?
I hear you. I understand.
Like, no. So when I got to that school and it really helped me, I looked up, I was like, you know, I'm going to be, and at that point, after I graduated, I never thought about it again. So at Fannie Mae in 2015, you know, walk around to the other side of the building, I looked out over to the east side of the building. And then when I started, I mean, we had like 3 rows of cubicles.
Mm-hmm.
Apartment took up the whole floor by the time we grew out, right? So I walked around to the other side of the building, and I was looking out, talking to one of my coworkers and looking out, and I said, "Oh man, you can see the new AT&T stadium way off in the distance, can't you?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, I can see it. Wow, you know, I don't have a great view. I look at the North Dallas Tollway." So. And then I said, "Oh, then right over there was the old Texas Stadium. Oh, look, there's the tower for UTD or University of Dallas, which is where my high school was." And then it occurred to me, I was like, "Oh crap, I did it!"
Wow,
that realization, like it was like, wow, I made myself a promise in high school, and here 30 years later, here I am. You know, so and then. My desire to be at Fannie Mae after that point just kind of wavered.
I get it. You there's that sense of like, wow, I've accomplished this.
I climbed the mountain, right?
Yeah.
Not even knowing I did. I climbed the mountain. So
Jim, I know I'm interrupting, but you started to share something. I want to bring us back because most people don't know what you're going to tell us next. But you were having a conversation. And you're like, wow, wouldn't it be interesting if, you know, we just had some basic ability to have large sets of data run. And if there was just a large variance, let's just kick it out so that like an experienced appraiser could take a look at it. So what does that turn into, Jim? Walk us down memory lane on that one.
Yeah, so let's go back to that. That's an interesting story. So I was at Fannie Mae for about a month and having lunch, and the guy sits down with me, and we're talking. And it's like, yeah, you know, somebody should make the system that does this. Okay, sounds good. And you know, he's like, yeah, that's a good idea. Well, what I didn't tell you earlier was, like a year after that, I get a call that said, "Hey, you remember you telling us about the system?
Yep.
We're going to design it. How about you come work for us?"
Oh, that's fantastic. That was an internal opportunity.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, that would be fun. However, it meant I have to move to DC. I'm Texan. I mean, I'm born, raised here, and I love traveling, and I love DC.
By traveling, do you mean just across the Great Plains and the Republic of Texas, or do you actually mean across the United States?
I love traveling around the United States.
Okay. You know, a lot of people just like traveling in Texas. I mean, it's more massive than anything else, as most people say.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I've driven through Texas for 12 hours and stayed in the state.
People just do not understand. I mean, except for, driving up and down either Florida or California, they have a hard time understanding that type of distance.
My manager was saying, well, you have a spot here in Dallas. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to move to DC. But so that program turned in, or that opportunity turned in, it was two programs. It was a program called Alpha, and an internal program called Alpha, and an internal program called Lambda. And Alpha stood for appraisal fraud, something. And Lambda was our system that showed how many serious delinquent loans that we had on the books at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And you had Jacob, I believe it was Jacob, on your show not too long ago.
Yep.
That he knows everything there is about Alpha.
Yes, he does. We're going to be having him back for a bonus section to talk a little more about Alpha.
Well, we should, yeah.
We'll have you back as well. It's a fun time. It's a new series that, through the suggestions of listeners, that we're launching.
Yeah, so these two systems basically merged, and now we call them collateral underwriter. And then one time I get my manager calls me in and says, hey, you're going to go drive around, look at these REO properties here in town with this guy from DC. Okay. Who's this guy from DC? Oh, he's one of the programmers that are working on Alpha, UAD and stuff. It's like, okay.
Yep.
So we get in the car where we're driving around and, asking him, his background. Oh, I have a bachelor's from, I think, Harvard and a PhD from MIT and statistical modeling mathematics, right? It's like, I have a decent understanding of statistics and modeling. I mean, I built several mass appraisal models for different counties in the state, and pretty good understanding. And within about 5 minutes of our conversation, I had no idea what he was talking about. But yeah, I was like, oh yeah, okay, you're a rocket scientist, are you? I mean, it was, so, but going back to getting on track here, it was 2015, and then at the end of 2015, they knew they needed to reduce ranks.
Yeah.
So one of the things that they did was offer a voluntary leave program. If you had this many years and if you're this age, they offered this really nice program. Well, I had the years, but not the age.
I see.
Everything was slowing down, and I knew we had too many people around the department. And in mid-2016, after all the old timers, you could say, left, I was in a department meeting and looked around and said, holy crap, I'm the most experienced one sitting in this room. I don't really like this. I've always been the stupid kid in the back of the classroom, right? Trying to learn from everybody else. I don't like to be this experience. I don't want to be. So, and then during that time, we realized my daughter was really struggling in school, and we knew that we were going to have to put her in the school that I went to. Yeah. And to that school was about a 45-minute drive each way.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And it was obvious that my wife couldn't make that drive.
Yep.
She had too many responsibilities. So it was going to be up to me. And we were like, okay, I can't continue working at Fannie Mae.
Yep.
I need more flexibility. What do we do? I don't know. What do we do? And then it occurred to me, it's like, wait a minute, I have an appraisal license. I'm certified residential. Why don't I go out and start my own firm? And my wife was going, you think you'd like that? I was like, I don't know. I mean, I've never worked for myself before. I mean, I've always wanted to be in a structured environment and been kind of told what to do every day, right?
Yeah. Not a bad thing necessarily. That really works for a lot of people.
Oh, I just want to pull a paycheck, because if you left me on my own devices, I'd be sitting around watching movies all day long. I need that structure, right?
Yes.
But yeah, let's try it. So I left Fannie Mae at the end of 2016, and at that time, and then my daughter wasn't going to start school until the next fall. So there was a large national mortgage company was hiring review appraisers, and I had been in the front end of the business since 2007, really. And I mean, I knew there were massive changes. So it's like, I'm going to go try to see what I think about working there. And I was there for about 3 months. But what I learned is how the review process was totally different with all the third-party data sources that were available now than when I was doing it in the 2000s, where there was not, right? You just kind of had to look at the appraisal and say, oh, yeah, I think there's an issue here.
Yes.
You have a third source to bounce stuff off of. I only stayed there 3 months, but the idea, I really learned what collateral underwriter did for the underwriting of the loan.
Got it.
And I took that knowledge, and I've always been able to take the knowledge from the prior position wherever I was and apply it to where I was going.
Yes.
So I worked there 3 months, and then I was going to start getting everything going on my business. I'm thinking I was going to jump in the summer, and I was going to magically get great clients,
Oh, from your mouth to the Lord's ears, Jim. I just, man, you speak blessings and just rain down upon you.
I don't know what I was thinking. I thought, my resume being at Fannie Mae was going to hold weight.
Yeah. It was going to hold something, Jim. I don't know what it was, but it was going to hold
Exactly. And another thing, I hadn't written a standard 2 report since like 99. And I've never written a live 1004.
Yes.
I'd written some, you could say, fraudulent ones to send through certain systems to see if, some
testing
data checks were done correctly, but nothing, live that somebody relied upon.
Yes.
So, I leave there and have to start with the low fee, high maintenance clients. But what I realized is I had to write my appraisals in a way, basically in a defensive tone. I learned that I had to, it's almost like I kind of talk about it in math terms, where standard 1 is solving the math problem.
Yes.
And standard 2 is writing the proof for that problem. And I know when you say proof in appraisal, those don't jive. I mean, I'm not saying my value is proven, because it's opinion, but once I saw how they were using collateral underwriter and how it all worked, it's like, okay, to write credible appraisals, I need to rethink my whole process here. So I constantly think, when I get done with writing an appraisal, I sit there and say, okay, somebody's half forgotten in a way. What are they going to have issues with here? And how am I going to have to explain it, right? And what Jim Park gave me the best advice one time, he said, appraisals are written specifically vague. I use the term, we need to be written specifically concise now. You need to explain what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're doing it, and not being so verbose that you're spending pages on pages on pages of this describing that the front door of the house is black. You have to summarize, but do it in a very concise and precise manner.
Yes.
And then write it in a way that the underwriter can just follow your train of thought through your scope of work, right?
That's a great point.
Reviewing, I came up with this kind of this analogy that most appraisals are written two ways: the Forrest Gump way or the Pulp Fiction way. And what I mean by that is
I love both.
comparing the two movies, right? Pulp Fiction, it starts in a random scene in the middle of the movie, and you spend the whole movie watching it, trying to figure out what's going on. And then it gets done, and you're like going, I have to watch that again. Whereas Forrest Gump just kind of, leads you down that path, so you know exactly what happened in his life throughout his, it just explains it. So I came up with what I call this addendum that I call the love letter to the underwriter or reviewer. And it
letter to the underwriter or reviewer. I'm capturing that one.
So it's just large
font.
No, well, every section is a large font saying what that section is about.
Got it.
3 comments for the subject property, right?
Yep.
And then comp selection, and then I have, and then discussion of comps in the report, why I'm using each comp and how they relate to the subject, and then adjustment support.
Yep.
Big, large, bold letters, and then I go down line by line in the grid and explain why there's an adjustment and how it was derived. I mean, it just when you do that and you have the reviewer, they understand. You're connecting those dots in a way that makes them understand. My first few months of me getting out doing appraisal work, I really concentrated on that. But my first few appraisals, like my first couple, they took me 10 hours a piece. It's like, I gotta be quicker at this.
80% of all businesses fail within 5 years, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. With so many roles and responsibilities that must be managed and have nothing to do with appraisal reports, is it any surprise that it's hard to keep up? Much less having a sense of peace, stability, and profitability that comes from growing your business? Given all of this, you might already be thinking about exiting your business one day. Don't miss the limited opportunity to work with Michael, a real estate expert and professional coach. He has worked with more than 300 owners and entrepreneurs to find their highest and best use by solving problems that reach their most important goals. Compress decades of learning into days by working with Michael. Michael is famous in real estate and business coaching. With his help, you can accelerate your growth, increase your quality of life, and earn more money, all while ultimately doing less. Michael helps you not just grow your business, but also find new purpose in it and in your life. If you're ready to take control instead of being controlled, contact him on LinkedIn or email him at michaelh@paru.com.
Well, either that or, you just need nice, complex and premium properties, and they just pay a wonderfully large fee. And you're like, hey, I'll gladly take the 10 hours. I love doing those kind of things.
That's the sad, as they were pretty rank and file type of property. So like I use Alamode software, and they have, I learned all the tools that are embedded in that software and learn to create basically my own AI, if you will, that reads the report and then spits out commentary.
Oh, nice.
When you're in the review space, it's very common that if you work for different companies, it's very common that you have these smart review rules.
Yes. GAR,
right. Yeah. And Jim Park.
Yeah, the generally accepted appraisal requirement.
Yeah, Jim Park was one of the people that helped design that.
Okay.
So I was a part of it a little bit. So, and then it spits out those rules. So I figured out, okay, I can just program this thing. So when one of those rules hits, it just spits out a commentary, right? A comment. So I don't even have to think about it.
That's great.
So that helped tremendously. I automated the reconciliation, both the sales comparison reconciliation and the general reconciliation as far as comments, and then just the math itself. I was able to just automate that. The thing I can do is deal with spreadsheets pretty good.
Yeah.
Right. And all that stuff. And it's all embedded within the software. So that helped me sped up. And then using, digital data collection tools. I started with iPad. Now I'm on my, I just measured the house with a laser.
Yes.
I mean, I use a laser. I Bluetooth the measurement into my phone and then just swipe which way it needed to be swiped, right? I mean, how hard is that, right?
Yes.
It's appraising for dummies, basically. So I, learned, and I got faster and I got better. And
Sure.
I was still just barely keeping my head above water. I mean, when you're sole proprietor,
Yep.
and, you're either making money or you have to stop that for a little while and try to go get more clients.
Yeah, it's hard.
I mean, I was having trouble getting what I call, A clients or B clients, those type of clients for a couple of years. And about a year and a half into it, I was like, this is not working. I need to do something else. And that summer, 2019, my daughter's babysitter, she was in college.
Yeah.
And we weren't going to need her for school. I asked her, I was like, would you like a part-time job while you're in school?
Do you know how to type?
Yeah, I mean, are you good with computers? And can you do this stuff? And she's like, yeah, let me sit down with you for an hour and see if I like it. And I was showing her how to do all this stuff. And I mean, my God, she got it like in minutes and was like twice as fast as I was. And she'd go pull public records and all I had to do was give her the links to the places. And she was working faster than I could keep up with her. And I showing her how to do stuff. And it's like, yeah, you can do it that way, but this way's better. It's like,
love it.
Okay, yeah. I tell you what, I'll pay you this much money per file.
Sure.
If you want to. Oh, that's perfect. That little bit that she was doing for me just changed my world, right?
Yeah, because I mean, that's, like you talked about it earlier. Where do you add most value?
Yeah.
And you focus on that, and that's valuable. And when you focus on things that are not as valuable, you get what you focus on.
Yeah. As I said, my dad, which is really my stepfather, my father passed away when I was 13. My mom remarried when I was 14.
Yeah.
He was a attorney in town, and they knew each other for years. And his wife had just passed away at the same time my dad passed away. So they got married, and they were married 40-something years.
Oh, it's impressive.
But he ran a very successful law office. And when I told him that, hey, I was going to start my own business, he sat me down and said, this is how you run a successful business. You figure out what people are paying you for and do that activity.
Yes.
And all the $15 an hour stuff, you find somebody else to do that and concentrate on. And he was like, look, I bill at a certain amount an hour.
Yes.
I can't bill those hours if I'm answering the phone, if I'm opening up the mail. And that's the reason why I have assistants, right? I mean, that conversation. So I was always like going, I need to get an assistant. I just never
got it.
I never got it. So we were getting 2019, we were getting everything smoothed out, the whole process smoothed out. I put my software on a server so we can move files back and forth. I'd go out and look at a property. I would upload it to the cloud. She would download it to the cloud, clean up the sketch, get everything ready for me so I could pick my final comp. And then she started scheduling for me.
Oh, wow.
Which was
wonderful.
Another huge thing. And that was my biggest fear is like, if I lose my scheduling ability, it's kind of like I lose my control of my life almost.
Yes.
And it's like after a couple months of her scheduling, it was like, this is the greatest thing ever.
Please don't give this back to me. Please don't give this back to me.
I could put a day. Hey, I want to take a day off.
Yeah.
I put it on the calendar, right?
Yes.
Guess what? I got that day off.
Oh,
I'd get that day off. Whereas if it was up to me, I would like, oh, I know I'm supposed to have this day off, but I'm going to go ahead and schedule one, right?
Yes.
And then 2020 happens.
Yep.
And I'm still not making much money, barely making it to pay her.
Sure.
And then 2020 happens. And during this time, I was constantly reaching out to local lenders here
Yes.
Direct lenders and trying to get on their panel. And, every 6 months I'd send an email out. No, we don't need anybody. We don't, I was constantly getting those. And I was like, oh, I'm just not asking the right questions,
Yep.
I just, when somebody says no, it's like, okay, it doesn't hurt me. I'm not doing something right. Just, I have to go figure it out. 2020 hit.
Yep.
COVID happened. And I was like, oh, crap. Here it goes. I mean, it's like things are going to go downhill big time.
Yes.
Well, opposite happened, right?
Yeah.
They lowered rates. Everybody and their brother started refinancing. By May of that year, I had more work than I could do, and all these calls that I were making for the last 2 years.
Yes.
They were calling me back and then, hey, do you still want to do work for us? Well, let me see here. I could do work for you for twice amount as I'm working for this person over here. So yeah, let me do that. So
good for you.
COVID happened, and then I gave her more responsibilities. And then my wife's mother, who was a teacher her whole career, retired. And, I just, in passing, I was like, hey, it would be really nice to have somebody on my QC team QCing my reports. If we're moving through this thing so fast, that I got to the point where, there's a minimum amount of I call it human hours that it takes to write a credible report.
Yeah, I get that.
You can reduce that amount by automation, right? Mm-hmm. Some automation reduces that, elimination of some stuff like eliminating paper in your office reduces a huge amount of time. And then eliminating double steps, but automation can reduce a good amount of time. But then delegation is the big thing.
That's a key, isn't it?
I mean, I was shocked that when I just concentrated on the analysis and the reconciliation of the data, how little time I was really spending on that, where it was a large portion of $15 an hour work that I was doing.
Oh, wow. Got it.
Gross or net? I'm going to say net. Say $40 an hour net I was making pre-delegation.
Yeah, of course.
Once we got a system up and running, $120 an hour.
That's fantastic.
That was probably not really accurate because when I was working by myself, I was working 50, 60 hours a week. And then when we got everything set up and going, I was working 40, maybe 50 hours a week.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
So 2021 came around. I remember telling my wife in the early part of 2021 going, kind of feel like I'm running a legitimate operation here.
Yeah, it sounds like you're running a legitimate operation there. You're running a real business there. It just happens to be an appraisal.
Yeah, I'm not running an appraisal shop. I'm running an appraisal office. I, have these assistants. I'm not just, working myself to the bone. I mean, I know appraisers that can work 20-hour days. I can't do that.
Yes.
For a long time. I mean, I can do it little sprints here and there, but not keep up with that. I call it data regurgitation. I call it information regurgitation or data regurgitation, where I have to take data from one data source and have to move it to somewhere else, right? I have to manually move it, either copy and paste it. So if I can figure out a way to automate that, to have the computer move it over or buy a system that does that, I'm going to do that. So we got that whole system set up, and 2021 was really good. I got to the point where, there's more work out here for me, but I can't handle all of it. What do we do?
Yes. And
so I knew a guy in a group that had a trainee that he had to let go because he just didn't have the work. So I said, hey, would you be interested in it? So, oh yeah, she'd be interested. So I hired her, and I didn't follow the golden rule.
Oh, no. What was the golden rule there, Jim?
Yeah, the golden rule is hire slow, fire fast.
Oh, no.
And fired slow.
Oh, no. That is painful.
She's the nicest, sweetest lady in the world. She was really, this goes back to, do you want to have the skill, or do you want to have, is the skill or the passion the most important? And she had the passion. She really wanted to be an appraiser, but I spent 6 months with her trying to get her to just measure a house correctly.
Oh my gosh. What happened to that old program you were part of? Bring them in at the end of 2 weeks. If you can't make it, you got to cut them.
I know. I always felt bad for those people too. I was like, we're bleeding heart with some of that stuff. So yeah, so it didn't work out. And I learned a big lesson about hiring people, because up to that point, I had the best people. I mean, I got lucky.
Yes.
I mean, I really got lucky. And, 2021 was incredible. 2022, going into 2022.
Yeah.
I always sit down at the end of the year and I'll do a look back at the year. It's like, okay, this is where we were. This is kind of where things are headed. What do we need to do?
Yeah.
And one of the things I do is I reach out to people that I've met, places I've worked with, Lehman,
Sure.
and Fannie Mae and places. I had to get an idea of what other people are thinking. And the advice I take are not people on YouTube that are the sky is falling type of people, or the world's just wonderful, that have no basis to say that whatsoever. I wanted to have discussions with people that know what they're talking about. So I have one friend that's an economist that studies the housing market and she's like, listen, the company line is that rates are going to go up to 5.5%. Mortgage volume is going to drop by 50%. And she was going, yeah, that's not going to happen. We're going to see rates go up to by the end of 2022. We'll see rates be up probably 6.5%, 7%. If that happens, mortgage volume is going to be down like 75%. And I was like, okay, that's worst case scenario. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. At the end of 2021, I actually hired a trainee that I met in a group a year and a half prior, comes to me and says, I just lost my sponsor. Would you sponsor me? And I was like, I've always told you I will mentor you, but I don't know if I want to sign your reports because you're in a totally different market than I am. She's down in Houston.
Oh, wow.
I'm up here. Yeah. So, but she was in a bind. I mean, this guy just kind of left her. And she does all non-lender work.
Oh, wow.
She goes out to her own work.
Yeah.
Right? She markets herself. Now, she has an extensive background in property management.
Okay.
And they own multiple rental properties.
Yes.
So she understands real estate. And she understands neighborhoods. She understands value. Like she can see value. She can pull up MLS and go, okay, this house is going to be worth, this house is probably going to appraise out about $250,000 or whatever it is, because she can see that data. She's really good at that.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, send me two redacted reports. Let me review them. And, I read them. And of course, they're I'm sorry to say this, they're crap.
Oh, no, it's terrible.
I mean, they're the same stuff that I've seen year after year after year reviewing stuff. And she had gone through 3 supervisory appraisers. She had failed the test twice.
Oh, geez.
But she knew the stuff. What that told me was she knew real estate.
Yeah.
She knew the markets. Nobody had taught her the finer points of appraisal. Nobody took the time. One thing about working at Fannie Mae was I sat on the floor with about 60 to 70 appraisers.
Yes.
And we would go to lunch together. And these were people that came in from all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
Boston, from Seattle, Florida, Denver. I mean, just everywhere. And we get to talking about, everybody gets talking about their backgrounds and stuff. And then we get to talking about how they do things here and how they do things there. And in my estimation, about 75 to 80% of the people come out of their training period being form fillers.
Yeah.
They learned how to fill out the form.
Yeah.
What's important is what you do with your career for the next few years,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I wasn't surprised at all that she had issues. So I agreed to it. I said, okay, I'll sign you up, and then we'll get you email access. I'll put you on the server. And, I was still busy at the time, and we were trying to get everything working out. But she had these files that they were just stuck.
Oh.
Because, she couldn't deliver them because she didn't have a supervisory, and she couldn't market herself. She couldn't do anything. So I was like, okay. So I reviewed her. I think she had 3 files at the time that she was working. And I reviewed them and tried to make with the time I had, tried to make as decent reports as I could. And they were still not up to my standard at all.
Tough.
It's like, okay. Then we set them off. And she became my trainee.
Oh, okay.
I swear to God, 2 months after we sent off that report, she gets a letter from the state. There's a complaint.
Oh, no.
I mean, no good, no deed, no good deed goes
unpunished.
Yeah, this could ruin me. I mean, this could.
Sure.
I was like,
sure.
this. And I'm looking at the report, going, we made a couple typos in it. One on the address on one of the comps.
It's a typo, though.
Yeah, typo. But that's been my whole fear.
Sure.
Being dyslexic, I've always had this fear of a typo turning into World War III with me, right?
Yeah.
It's a fear with us. I mean, it's just, that's what we live with. We respond back to the state. 2 months goes by, and they send a letter back saying you're fine. Just do these 2 or 3 items. Just we want her to notify the public that she is a trainee and not a fully licensed appraiser, which when you're a trainee, you are a licensed appraiser. You just have to work underneath somebody, right? I hate the word trainee. I wish we could use.
It's a terrible.
When I was doing tax work, you were a registered professional appraiser, RPA. So, they should be known as registered appraisers.
Yeah, that's a good point.
To me, that makes sense. That takes that trainee name out of it. Like they're nobody.
No, that's a good point.
So we started working together, and she's been learning and she's progressed tremendously. But working with her, I realized something. And then I got to know her, and I got to know her background. And I was like, you failed the test twice. Why did you fail the test? She was like, I just kind of ran out of time. I didn't have time. I was rushed. I was like, okay, tell me about your schooling. And she did, and she had a real hard time in school. And I said, okay, I'm going to find somebody in Houston to get you tested for learning disabilities. You're an obvious case of it. And sure enough, some severe issues that she's been masking, and things like taking tests are really tough for her. So the nice thing about the ADA is when you're listed as having a disability, they have to make certain allowances for you.
Yep.
And one of those allowances is they can add extra time on a test.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we are working through that process, hopefully with the state, to get her extra time on the test so she can pass it and become a licensed appraiser.
Man, that's phenomenal, Jim. I mean, what a wonderful testament to contributing to others. I mean, it'd be real easy, as many people have done, just to say, hey, and I want to help you, but I can't. And then they keep going. But for you to stop and take the time to really help pay it forward, I mean, that is fantastic.
So that's pretty much what I'm spending my, work has slowed down for me, obviously, like everybody else. And I've worked on the non-lender side of things to keep enough work flowing in. My main BA, the one I hired out of college, she left at the beginning of last year. She had a great offer, and
oh, wow,
we decided to part ways. So it was going to be tough to pay her, but we left on great terms. My mother-in-law is still working for me, so she's doing a lot of the VA stuff. She still wants to work. It keeps her mind active, so it's great for her.
Yes.
My daughter now is driving herself to school. I have 3 hours of the day back to me. So yeah, I mean, I do appraisal work about 3 days a week. I go play golf one day,
Good for you.
do family stuff one day. Then I either mentor other appraisers, or do prospecting for new work, marketing, or networking one day a week. And, Fannie Mae has been sending out these tip notices and to the states. The state reviews the files, and through networking and stuff, people will approach me and say, how can you help me become better? And that gives me so much joy now to mentor people that they didn't write bad appraisals. They just can do a little bit better, or maybe some more better. And continuing on with this profession that I'm crazy about. I love it more today than I think I've ever have in my career. I mean, the passion for it has grown over time. When I get these appraisers that, they got slapped from the state. They get a letter back from the state saying, hey, you need to work on these things. They'll reach out to me and say, hey, can you work with me on this and this? And I'm sure. Because I remember all the older guys that sat and mentored me, and this is just the way I can give back to the future. And it feels good to see the light bulbs go off in their head, like, oh, okay, nobody, I'm always told that you should put 35% GLA adjustments, and you need to draw a circle around your 1 mile radius around your subject, and just pull comps from that 1 mile radius. That's how my original supervisor, told me how to do it. And it needs to be 20% GLA difference, and you can't go out.
It's pretty common, Jim. A lot of people know that one. Oh, man. So, Jim, let me ask you a question. I mean, given everything you've seen and everything you've been experienced with, I mean, you have literally been at the outset of a number of transformational technologies here in the industry, some of which you were directly involved with, some of which you were tangentially involved in. But what are you optimistic or looking forward to over the next 3 to 5 years around the industry, around the profession, around valuation, around appraisal?
I'm really looking forward to the new forms coming out. I think if a software provider steps up to the plate and offers us a software package for the Windows 11 world, and not something that was designed for XP world, it could change the way that we really do things. One thing it's a personal thing for me, but I do not mind a bifurcated product process at all. But as the appraiser, as the person that's signing the report, that's signing my name to it, I have to be confident in that information that's being provided to me. The one thing that I don't like is these companies that are doing these bifurcated things. I personally think that if they wanted to do that, then we need to truly promote the trainee program or something similar where, as I say, the appraiser is on top of the pyramid instead of just another stonecutter making stonecutter salaries for some big company.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Jim, this has been such an informative double session. I mean, we don't always get the opportunity to get the inside view. As I say, inside baseball. It is always fascinating, and I can't even begin to imagine how some people's heads might be spinning as they connect some of their own dots and consider what might be available to them. And who knows what great ideas people are sitting on that they're like, wow, well, if I did this or that, I might be able to create my own automation or their own technology, their own bot or something else. Not so much just around streamlining, but across that, greater supported conclusion and more confidence around value reconciliation. So it's absolutely fantastic. Can't wait to see all the comments on it. So Jim, we just want to again, thank you so much for joining us here on Perusing's The Power of Values.
It's been great to be on. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well, with that, friends, we're going to bring another wonderful, informative, and inspiring episode to a close. And until the next one, go have a great day.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Perusing's Appraisers on Purpose. We hope you enjoyed learning from the amazing professional paths and achievements of our beloved guests. Before we go, please subscribe on your listening channel, Spotify, LinkedIn, YouTube, and other podcast channels to hear more from appraisers and valuers regarding their life and their work. After you drop a comment below, who is one friend and peer you can generously share this episode with? If you have any suggestions or questions for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. Just send us a message on LinkedIn and we'll be sure to get back to you. Thanks again for listening, and until we're together again for the next session of Perusing's Appraisers on Purpose, create the change that you seek.